You had a great discovery call. The demo went well. They said all the right things. This looks really promising. Let's get something scheduled. We'll bring in the team. And then silence. And a week goes by. Then two, you follow up, you get a vague reply, you follow up again. And suddenly a deal that felt like a sure thing is collecting dust in your pipeline. So if that sounds familiar, today we're going to be talking about why deals stall and, more importantly, exactly what to do to get them moving again. So welcome back to the podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, hype if you're on YouTube. That's really helpful. So thanks for that. And last time we spoke about objections and how to handle objections. So hopefully you found that useful. But that's kind of part of the story. And excuse me, the next part, of course, is if you've got a stalled deal, how do you get it moving? But before we go into how to get it moving, it's really important to understand why the stall happened in the first place. So two reasons for that. One is to prevent stalls happening in future, at least as far as you can. And secondly, to understand if you have a current sale that's in this situation, and we've all been there, what is likely to be the cause? How do you diagnose it? And then how do you get the thing moving again? So the first thing to understand is that deals don't stall because the prospects lose interest. They usually stall because something internally has shifted, and you as a salesperson, or me as a salesperson when it happened to me, I didn't know about it at that point. And there are some common causes for that. So here are, what have we got, 5 causes. There's a shift in priorities. So just something bigger landed on their plate, and your deal, your conversations just suddenly became a lot less urgent because something else came up. So there's that priority shift. Another problem is that there might be an internal misalignment. So in other words, there's a stakeholder involved in the sale that you have not identified, you never met, or for some reason you haven't had direct contact with them, you haven't had the opportunity to make sure they feel reassured that their concerns are met and that they have concerns, so they're blocking progress. And I've spoken before about how it's possible to alienate people unintentionally. I've also got a short series that you can access about communication styles, and they are a classic blind spot because you may have no idea you have just really annoyed somebody, and it's purely in the way you're communicating with them. So that's a whole other subject. And as I say, there is a resource you can get on the website to help you with that. So that's internal misalignment. There's also budget uncertainty. So somewhere along the way, maybe in the approvals chain, the opportunity got stalled. The money wasn't forthcoming. So hopefully you've been running with deals where you have confirmed that budget is available. That's obviously a really important thing to understand up front, but something's happened. So budget may have come back as being an issue. And then the fourth thing that may have happened is fear of change. And this is quite natural, certainly depending on the kind of thing you're looking at. Some deals, some solutions that you're offering can involve a fairly substantial change. And there's going to be anxiety about that. And it's a really important one to understand because you need to keep that nurtured. You need to keep reassuring them that they are making the right move because it is a big step. And it's one thing talking about making a big change. You can talk about it internally, you can talk to external people, but actually stepping into that situation, actually giving it the go-ahead can be a really big issue for some people. So it could well be about anxiety. Or it might simply be that you've lost control of the next steps. When you last had a meeting, your last, whether it was a demo, discovery call, whatever it was, you ended with a "we'll be in touch" instead of a firm commitment. Yep, we'll go ahead on this date, we'll do whatever we're going to do next, but everyone's clear. So the important thing from all of this is that a lot of stalled deals aren't actually lost at this point, but they are stuck because they're waiting for somebody to really take the initiative. And the bottom line is that has to be you. So how do we diagnose the real reasons? That's the next thing to look at. Now, a lot of salespeople, what they will do in this situation is to just send more information or start discounting or follow up with just checking in emails. And none of these things actually fix the underlying problem. And they don't fix the underlying problem because you haven't identified what the problem actually is. So the important thing to do is to ask some questions. And again, 5 examples. So one of them could be what's changed on your end or at your end since we last spoke. It's neutral, it's open, it's not pushy, and it gives them the opportunity to tell you the truth, which is obviously what you really need. An alternative is to ask, where does this sit on your priority list right now? So that could be the situation where something else has come up. So this is designed to elicit an honest conversation about potentially internal competition for attention, resources, whatever it might be. But it just gives you an opportunity, and it gives them an opportunity to let you know what is really going on internally. Or you could ask who else needs to get involved in this before we move it forward. And again, the point of this is to identify any hidden stakeholders who might be blocking progress. And again, I would suggest this is a really important part of the initial conversations where you identify everyone who has some role in this purchase, regardless of size. You need to know who's in there, because somebody with what appears to be a low level of influence can just mess things up enough, to just use a phrase, to stall the whole thing for you. Or another one to try, depending on what your style is, what would need to be true for this to move forward in the next 30 days? So this is quite a powerful question, because what you're doing, you are really setting up a concrete path. You're setting a timeline, and this is basically saying, well, if it's going to happen in the next 30 days, what needs to happen? What's stopping it, in other words? So this is important, because assuming that they answer you honestly, then if you deal with those issues, the deal will go ahead. So it's a powerful question to use. And finally, you can ask, is there anything giving you or the team pause that we haven't talked about before? So again, this question is designed to just open the door to any concerns that they've been reluctant to raise. So it could be a fear of implementation. It could be something to do with internal politics. There could be a competitor that maybe you're aware of or you're not, but they are maybe doing a better job than you are, frankly. So the idea of these questions is to just understand what the block is. And if this gives you ideas for other questions you can ask, then absolutely go for it. Because the bottom line here is to stop trying to push the deal forward before you understand why it stopped. So it's really important to diagnose first. And then obviously once you know what the cause of the blockage is, you can decide how you're going to deal with it, or the best way forward. So I'm going to look at the 5 most common types of stall and how to fix each one. So the first one is the ghost. So what does that look like? It's basically emails go unanswered, calls just go straight to voicemail, the prospect just disappears, you can't get hold of them. And the reason that this happens is that it could be that something's changed internally. So there might well be a reorganization, there could be a freeze on spending, there could be a competing priority, or they may have made a quiet decision to go in a different direction and they don't want the awkward conversation. And again, this will come down partially to the personality style, which is something else I go into in my full course, the consultative sales system. We look at all of that, how to identify those kind of people, and they're the ones who are probably most likely to ghost you. So how can you deal with that? The first thing is to try a different channel. So it could be a different form of reaching them. So it might be to telephone them if you've been emailing, or try LinkedIn contact or something. Another one that could be more effective is to try a different contact at the company, because if that person might have left, they might be ill, there's all sorts of things can happen. And companies are not always that good at switching over, having somebody pick up the slack for the one who's gone. So having an alternative contact is really important. Another option is to send a short, low pressure, basically a breakup email, and something along the lines of, I don't want to keep cluttering your inbox. If the timing isn't right, or you've gone in a different direction, just please let me know and I'll get out of your way. If there is still interest, I'm here. Often that kind of approach can get a response when nothing else does. And another option is to just give a hard deadline internally. So basically, if you don't get a response a certain period after the breakup email, let's say a week or two, then just move it into a nurture sequence and basically regard that deal as, for whatever reason, it seems to have gone somewhere else. Keep it nurtured so that you are keeping it on the back burner is another phrase, but you've got limited time, so you need to be putting your time, focusing your time on deals that are more likely to happen. Now, another type of stall is the internal logjam. So this is when your internal contact is engaged, but they keep saying we're still getting internal alignment, or we're waiting on approval, or basically they're stalling. So why does this happen? Well, it could be that a stakeholder you don't know about is asking hard questions. They could be stalling, or they could be actively blocking. And the person who is coaching you or championing your solution might lack the authority or the internal influence to push it through on their own. So how do you unstick that one? Well, ask your coach directly. Who in the business has the most concerns about moving forward? Can we get them on a call? Offer to help your coach sell internally. Give them a one-page business case. Give them an ROI summary. Give them a competitive comparison that they can share upwards. Whatever resources they need, if they're willing to share that with you, provide what you can. And a good one is to request a meeting with the economic buyer directly. So I want to make sure the right people have what they need to feel confident. Would it make sense to get 20 minutes with your CFO, your vice president, whoever it might be, whoever the potential cause of that stall is? And remember, you are always going to do a better sales job, or I would hope you would anyway, do a better sales job of selling your solution than somebody else, even within that company, even if they've got a really good understanding. You know your solution in depth, you can answer questions. So it is really important to make sure that you are talking to the right people. Okay, the third type of stall is the budget black hole. So what this looks like is where you'll get comments like, we love it, but we're waiting on budget approval. And basically that approval never seems to come. And the reason that happens is that either the budget genuinely isn't there, it's possible the internal sponsor hasn't made a strong enough case for it, or the deal itself doesn't have enough perceived urgency to basically get handled. And I've actually had this with the contact I had. He kept telling me that, yeah, the budget was all approved, we were all going ahead, but it all kept stalling. And in the end, I just went round him and went to his manager, who said, no, the budget was never approved. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you are able to double check things if you're not confident with your initial contact, and to bring more people in, particularly more senior people, so at least you're getting it from them that what needs to be approved has been approved. So how do you unstick this one? We'll help build the internal business case. So you've got all of the ROI frameworks. The risk of inaction is a good one, because this is building on the pain points that got you to this point anyway, got you to this part of the process. Explore creative structuring. Could be a phased rollout, which is something that I've used to unstick a deal where budget was an issue. We did a phased rollout with phased payments. It could be a delayed start date. It could be annual versus monthly pricing, whatever it needs to be. So look at how you can be a little bit more creative around whatever the problem is. You could create a cost of delay conversion. So again, you come back to what is this problem costing you each month while approval is pending. So it comes back to what's the cost of inaction. It's the financial motivation to do something now, not leave it 3 months, 6 months. Ask them when the next budget cycle, the next budget review cycle is, and lock in a specific conversation for that time. So with certain companies, and this is particularly true if you're dealing with government, they will have budgetary cycles, and you need to understand what they are, because you need to understand when the budgets get approved, which is often early. It could be in the previous financial year. You also need to understand that there comes a point where the budget has to be spent. And often what will drive that is that the budget is deemed as spent when it's been invoiced, when the money has actually gone out of the account. So if you are delivering a solution and there's a lead time to that delivery, and then after that you're on, let's say, 90-day payment terms with that client, you have to make sure that delivery happens and you do your final invoicing by the end of March, if you are working with a financial year that ends at the end of June, as it does in Australia. So you need to understand how these cycles work, because it may well be that the reason you have a problem is that you missed the cycle, you've missed a critical point. And another thing with people with budgets, particularly in government, if they got a budget, they want to spend it, because often what happens the following year is if they didn't spend the previous budget, it will get reduced. So and then all sorts of shenanigans go on to make sure the budget is spent, but just to be aware of that. Okay, the fourth type of stall is the fear of change. So this is where the prospect keeps saying positive things, but they won't commit. So there's lots of enthusiasm, but there's no action. And the reason for this is quite simple. Change is uncomfortable. And for some people, it is really difficult to make that step. So even when somebody wants the outcome, the actual process of making the change, it could be switching vendors, it could be migrating data, it could be training people, it could be just justifying a decision to their leadership. It all feels very risky. And so the pain of changing becomes more than the pain of staying with what they've got. So you've got to build that pain level up. So the pain of staying with where they are outweighs the fear of changing. So again, how do you unstick that one? We'll acknowledge the fear directly. So you can say, look, I understand that making a switch like this is a real undertaking. And I really want to help you through that transition. What part of it feels most daunting to you at the moment? And you can work through like that. Or share a specific customer story about someone who had the same hesitation and what happened after they made the move. So it's that reassurance, it's that the sort of social awareness. It's not the word I'm looking for, but it's gone. You can reduce the perceived risk if you offer a phased implementation. It could be a pilot program. It could be any kind of agreement. It could be an extended onboarding period. Anything that softens or makes that change easier, makes it less of a hard blow. And again, the other one is to just remind them of the cost of the status quo. So the problem they described when you did your discovery call, your discovery meeting, it's still happening. Obviously, they reached a level of pain where they agreed to speak to you, whether you initiated the initial contact or they did. So you need to build on that as well. Okay, and then the final type of stall I'm going to talk about in this podcast is the lost next step. So this is where the deal felt great, but it ended with a vague, let's reconnect soon, or we'll be in touch, or send over the proposal and we'll take a look. And the reason that happens is that the salesperson, so remember, you're leading this sale, you're responsible for this sale, and you haven't locked in a specific next step, you haven't agreed that with the client, you haven't agreed a date. And without clear action on both sides, that's when the deal will begin to drift. So it is really important when you have these meetings to agree verbally, get a date in the diary for the next meeting or the next action, and then summarize it in an email is how I generally recommend it, and send that to everybody involved so that everyone is very, very clear. So how do you unstick it? We'll re-engage with a concrete proposal. So I want to make sure this doesn't slip through the cracks for either of us. Can we put 30 minutes on the calendar for whatever the date might be to just walk through the next steps together? Or get in touch and be direct about where things stand. I want to be respectful of your time. Is this still something you're actively evaluating, or has it moved to the back burner? Just ask if it's still something that is live. And I've done that before. It's a good question to ask. Most people that I've dealt with will respond, give you an honest answer when you approach it that way. The important thing with all of this is to use it as a lesson when you're going forward. And all of these stalls, it's to learn what's going on. So in this instance, it's to always end every sales conversation with a locked-in, calendar confirmed next step before you finish the call, whether it's on the telephone, video call, face-to-face. Doesn't really matter. And for any of these things, just learn from how things, what the signs are that you saw, and then what the response was when you followed up. But do follow up, because it's important that you don't just let things lie. Okay, so one more thing that prevents stalls, and these are mutual action plans, and I really recommend that you do this. So this can be a very simple shared document that outlines what both sides need to do, when they need to do it, and that will get them to a decision. So this can be done as an email. This isn't, I don't want to over-formalize it. I'm not that kind of a person. But it needs to be very, very clear, whatever form that document takes. Agree early in the process what the journey will be, if you like, what the key milestones are, when they got to happen, who's responsible for what to make that happen. And then you stay on top of it. You're the project manager, even if somebody else within your client's business, if it's a business-to-business sale, is project managing, you're project managing from your side. So you need to stay on top of that. Keep both sides accountable, and that will tend to show where the blocks are pretty early on. And it definitely makes this sort of we're still aligning internally business much, much harder. And that's also much harder if you can get an early meeting with all of the stakeholders, if it's possible to do that, so that you get agreement from everybody about who's doing what to whom and all this kind of stuff. So the important thing to remember here is that a deal without a clear, mutually agreed next step, it isn't a deal, it's a wish. Every conversation that you have with your client should end with a date, a decision, or a deliverable. And ideally all three, so that you know exactly where you are in the process, you know exactly what's going on, and you can move it forward. Okay, so that is it for this podcast. So what I'd like you to take away from this is just to remember that deals stall because something shifted internally, and your job is to find out what that is. Diagnose before you take any action, because if you apply the wrong fix to the wrong type of stall, you're going to make things worse, or you'll just give away money unnecessarily. I've worked with companies who immediately go into offering discounts, and I've had to stop them because that wasn't what was going on. So there's a specific playbook for each of the 5 types of stall that I covered. So the ghost, the logjam, the budget black hole, the fear of change, and the lost next step. And the best way to unstick a deal is to never let it stall in the first place. So lock in the next steps every time. So what I suggest you do, rather than have this theoretical, just pick one deal that you have in your pipeline right now that's been quiet for maybe a couple of weeks or more. Just send a diagnostic question. It could be what would need to be true for this to move forward in the next 30 days, and just see what comes back. Obviously, I'd also suggest actually just using your own voice, your own language in that, but ask that kind of a question, and you might well be surprised at what comes back. Okay, so that is it from me. Next time, I'm going to look at why urgency is the most or lost urgency, but building urgency is the most misunderstood concept in sales, and how to create it without resorting to fake deadlines or pressure tactics and all that kind of stuff. So, as I said, please like, subscribe, follow, whatever the new thing, Hype, I think it is, on YouTube. You can tell I'm really on top of all this stuff. And also, please share this with a colleague, friend, manager, whoever it might be, who might find these podcasts useful. And of course, if you check the website, so www.salescraft.training, there are webinars, there are free resources, there's obviously the formal courses, there's EDIS profiling, so you can understand exactly your kind of behavior type and natural type and how you can adjust that to get better communication with your clients. Okay, have a great day. Good luck with your selling, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now. Now, just before I go, how's your closing? So I know that a lot of salespeople struggle with knowing how to close effectively, and that's why I've put together a free PDF. It's called 7 Proven Closing Techniques that boost conversions by 30%. It's a free download. It's available on my website. All I need from you is an email address, so I know where to send it, and it's yours. So just go to the website, www.salescraft.training, and you'll find it about halfway down the homepage. So please take a look at that, and good luck with your selling, and I will speak to you next time. Bye for now.